Hi, how y'all doing today? Today's topic is what to do about burnout. And the first thing I really wanted to do was to share this book with y'all. It's called Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by the Nagoski sisters. Some of what I speak to here is drawn from this book. Others are from my own journey towards figuring this kind of stuff out for me. What is burnout anyway? I like the definition that they use in the book, which is emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, a decreased sense of accomplishment. That's sort of how they break it down there. I would add that for me, on occasion, I get this sense of impending doom. Like everything's really fine, but I just kind of get these moments where I'm like, everything's going to come crashing down. And I've learned to think through and trace back where that comes from. I get that little bit of that special sauce in there too sometimes. So what's it like? It's kind of different for everybody how these things manifest. Maybe you can relate to some of my experiences. Kind of a sense that I'm working on these tasks and I'm just pushing paper around and it's meaningless and nobody really cares about it. Paradoxically, kind of a sense that I'm not getting enough of my lists done. I'm not getting these things done so that I can just chill out and not do anything for a minute, or that I'm not achieving enough. I'm not doing enough cool things. All of that kind of spiral of paradoxical things. Frustration with people around me can increase at times. I have a bit of an increased tendency to be on the judgy side of things. I'm not necessarily a snappy person. I can judge with the best of them for sure, when it's really none of my business. A tendency, on the other hand, to over-explain or justify things when a simple yes or no would do just fine. It has physical manifestations too. You can hear people say that stress has physical manifestations and be like, yeah, okay, whatever. When this really came home to me was actually quite recently. I've struggled with blood pressure issues, nothing severe, but you want to watch that when you're a guy my age. I've struggled with that for many years. Exercise certainly helps that, but I also take some medications that help knock that blood pressure down. As you know, anybody who's watched this channel knows my mom passed away in February, and I had spent a long period of time prior to that being a part-time caregiver with her. And as the only child, somebody who was responsible for how she was treated, how she was cared for, and a lot of aspects of her life, financially and caregiving and medical and all of those sorts of things. And I had spent a long time in that world. It's a stressful thing. And when there were crises, and there were, and these are go to the emergency room, have surgery, be in a rehab for 3 months crises, then I'm responsible for that. I have to take care of those things. There is no one else to do that. When my mom would be freaking out or having a dementia-related hallucination of some kind, I'm the one who's getting the call. Those kinds of things add up. Back to the persistent blood pressure problem is, I go in, I have an autoimmune disease. I went in pretty regularly and had blood work done, and I'd have these blood pressure checks, and he'd be like, I guess it's okay. Make sure you watch your diet and exercise, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes in the past few years, he kind of upped one of the blood pressure medications a little bit and gave me a little talking to at times about some other things that would help with the blood work. So anyway, I had to go in for one of these periodic checks about 3 months after my mom passed away. Now, in the interim, I tend to start running, jogging, to be accurate, 3 or 4 times a week during when it's warm out, starting in April-ish and moving forward. And so, maybe that had a little something to do with it. But so I go in, I get my blood pressure checked, and it was 98/70. And he was like, wow, that's the best blood pressure reading you've ever had. And I'm like, I know, because the best that I had ever seen, I self-monitor some too, was 120 over 80. And that was when I was in a lot better shape than I am now. That was just amazing to me. I was like, wow, I'm blown away. He's like, hey, but we don't have your blood work done. So can you make an appointment and come in and get your blood work done? And so I did. And that was about 2 weeks later or so that I was able to get that appointment and come and get the blood work done. And so I come back in, they take my blood pressure again, 90 over 70. Then we look at the blood work after a little bit, straight greens all down the road. Like nothing. Everything is straight up normal. And it was pretty funny because my son actually said to me, well, it's because your mom's dead. And that's actually funny. And that is part of the humor that our family has. I laughed a lot and I still think it's funny. He's not wrong. I mean, a whole big giant source of stress had left. That said, that manifestation of now that's gone. That's part of what I am emotionally processing at this time, which is also something to do with burnout. What do we do about that? And I'm going to talk about that here next. What do we do when we're feeling burned out? If we're having those emotional exhaustion, disconnection, depersonalization of people, and decreased sense of accomplishment with some of those paradoxical extra flavors that I described. Maybe you experienced those too. This is going to sound funny to dudes out there, but you've got to make friends with your emotions and reflect on what they mean for you. Gosh, I didn't learn how to do that for a long time, and it's no fun. A reflective process to understand why you feel the way you do in particular situations and not in others, or why particular patterns of behavior tend to come up in response to similar situations, really important. And I can't tell you what those are because I just know what they have been for me, but I needed to be able to be much more in touch with my emotions than I was, say, 30 years ago. Second, you got to talk to other people. And again, for a lot of people, this is really difficult. Find some people you trust and just start talking to them about it. And it can be the most alien thing and uncomfortable thing that you would consider doing, yet at the same time, the reason it feels that way is because we don't do it enough. And when we break out of that habit and receive some support and love in return for having done that, it changes that dynamic in your brain. Many of us have created pathways in our brains, again, that kind of physical manifestation of things. We create pathways in our brain for behaviors that seem safe, seem like the best way because that's the way we learn how to do them. Learning how to create new environments for yourself and do things in a different way can be really uncomfortable at first, but once you start doing it, man, it's a big deal. Talk to other people you trust. Tell them what's going on with you. That doesn't mean that you're asking them to tell you what to do. It's more that you are asking them to be a part of that and to have some maybe accountability with them a little bit that you're working on this. Third, and you hear this all the time, but it's true, exercise at whatever pace or difficulty or lack thereof that works for you. Personally, right now, this is what I do. I'm on a text chain with some guys and we do some push-ups and we do some sit-ups and we do some squats and some other stuff. And we even put on there like, hey, I mowed the lawn today. That counts for something. And nobody's jumping on anybody's ass about anything. Nobody's being a jerk. It's just to kind of say like, hey, I did this today. Some days you don't do anything. Other days you might run 2 or 3 miles. That's for me. There's other guys on there that are running 5 or 6. That's great. I appreciate that. I'm not going to do that. It's just not going to happen. Doing that kind of keeps me accountable to them. Again, I mentioned that I run, at least twice and usually more like 3 or 4 times a week. I usually do 2 or 3 miles at a pop. And that kind of pattern and routine of doing exercise, and it doesn't take that much time. Those sets of exercises that I do take about 15 minutes. And I think most people can find 15 minutes to do something. Does it feel like I'm doing a ton of things? No, but can I tell over time that that's having an effect? Yeah, I can. Running for me is a huge mental benefit for me. Might be something else for you, but for me, jogging really clears my mind and puts me in a better spot. Moderation. Now, I don't know what that is. When it comes to several things, with a lot of things like drinking and other substances, I have to abstain from that completely. However, I know a lot of people who don't need to do that and find themselves at times drinking more than they would like to, or smoking more cigarettes than they would like to, or whatever it happens to be, or overeating. I've done that a little bit too at times. Try to keep things in moderation. Here's the thing, I need to mention this too. Avoid those toxic positivity people who are constantly talking about, oh, you just need to get in touch with what you're grateful for. And yes, that can be beneficial. But man, you know what? I mean, like, you know what I'm talking about. The constantly projecting that you're supposed to be upbeat all the time types of folks. And you see them online a lot, but I know some in person too. I just try to avoid that because I'm just not that, okay? I'm not that guy. Also, avoid jerks. There's a lot of those out there too. People who will immediately be like, well, you know what you should do. I think that phrase should be eliminated from everyone's vocabulary. When I am in a position where I need to be vulnerable with somebody else, I don't want them to tell me what to do unless I ask. And I really, really try to respect that as a rule for myself too. And I haven't always been that way in my life, and I've paid the consequences. Really try not to tell other people what to do, but rather listen and find those people who are just there to listen and will be there with you and listen to whatever it is and just be there with you. It's okay. Self-care. And I know that this has some negative connotations. If you want to see a little bit more about how I practice self-care, I've got another video on that. I'll link it down below. But essentially it means that you don't have to be super productive and responsible for everything all the time. You can take time out of your day to go do something that's fun for you, buy something that's nice for yourself, work on a hobby, whatever it happens to be. Those things are good for you and you should do them. And finally, a couple last points, give yourself a break. You're a human being, not a human doing. One of my friends had a great story about list making. Happened to bring up that I was tackling some things on my list, and she kind of knows me. So she said, we all like lists. And I'm like, oh yeah, I love lists and I love making lists. And she goes, we love it when we can check things off our list. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's awesome. She goes, one of the dangers of that is you can put all this stuff on your list, and then if you don't get it all done, then you feel like you didn't achieve what you needed to achieve that day. I'm like, oh yeah, I felt like that many times. She said, if you can get 3 things on your list done, you're even. If you can get 4 things done, you're ahead. She says, sometimes that might be that you got out of bed and took a shower, that you went outside and got the mail, and that you did some dishes. And maybe you got 3 things done that day, and that's okay. Hopefully, she said, we won't have too many days like that, but it's okay if you do. If you spent the rest of the day just laying on the couch watching TV, it's okay every once in a while to do that. Don't try to be cranking through your list and feel defeated then when you can't get all those things done, because you got to take time for yourself. You got to take time to be with the people that care about you and your animals and everything else. If your process of reflecting on the nature of your burnout and those emotions lead you to look at your job as a potential source for that, see if you can find ways to shift in the responsibilities that you hold. Maybe make a move to a slightly different position, maybe shift some responsibilities, take on something different, not in addition to, but different from what you're doing now, something more interesting and fun or new to you. That might be helpful. However, if that stuff persists and you continue with this sort of reflective process, it might be a good idea to get a different job. I worked in sales for many, many years, and fundamentally, it was expected of me to do that, and I could do it, but I never liked it. But I could never figure out how do something different. And so eventually I figured out what that path was for me, and I'm not going to tell that story here. I've talked about it many times. I figured out that path and made what many people thought was a precipitous decision to go into education, pursue a PhD, and so forth and so on. And really, honestly, I couldn't be more pleased with the results. Now, I would sum this entire discussion by saying, this is really for slight to moderate burnout. If you feel like things are much worse than that, there's absolutely no reason not to go seek professional help. And I would encourage you to, turn off this video and go find somebody that can provide some counseling or therapy of some kind. I've done it at times in my life, as recently as a couple years ago, and I will probably do it again. More and more people are taking advantage of this stuff every day. And it's really oftentimes the opportunity to engage with somebody who is outside of the circle of your world and who knows human beings, but isn't involved with your particular circumstances and can provide an outside look at things. And if you need outside help in the form of medications and things like that, it's absolutely a great resource to be able to get those from licensed people and all of that. And I know a lot of people who take various medications for anxiety and this sort of thing. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. People need those. I hope this has been a good video for you. I have been thinking about making it for a while. I hope you enjoyed it, and likes, subscribe, shares, all of that. Comments down below are definitely welcome. And I hope you all have a great day tomorrow, and appreciate you spending some time with me today. Thanks.